Kyra Voss hated Mondays, but this particular Monday was about to become the worst day of her life, and ironically, the beginning of humanity's greatest triumph. The nondescript gray van pulled up beside her as she trudged home from another mind-numbing shift at the factory. Before Kyra could even register what was happening, a pair of impossibly strong arms yanked her inside. What the dash? Kyra's scream was cut short as something sharp pricked her neck. The world began to spin, colors blurring into a nauseating kaleidoscope. Her last conscious thought was that she'd never complain about Mondays again, if she lived to see another one. When Kyra awoke, the sterile white walls and strange humming sounds told her she definitely wasn't in Kansas anymore. Or Earth, for that matter. Subject 37 is conscious, a voice stated flatly. It sounded wrong, as if someone had recorded 1,000 different people saying those words and mashed them together into a discordant mess. Kyra tried to sit up, only to find herself strapped to some kind of examination table. Panic clawed at her chest as she struggled against the restraints. "Let me go," she screamed, her voice hoarse and unfamiliar to her own ears. "Where am I?" A figure stepped into view, and Kyra's brain short-circuited. It was vaguely humanoid, but everything was just off. Too tall, too thin, with skin that seemed to shimmer and shift like oil on water. Its eyes were enormous, pitch black, and entirely devoid of emotion. "Greetings, Subject 37, the creature said in that same unsettling mishmash of voices. "You have been chosen for the advancement of your species. Be honored." Kyra's mind reeled. Aliens. Actual aliens. And they'd abducted her for... what? Some kind of twisted experiment? "My name is Kyra," she spat, summoning every ounce of defiance she could muster. "And I don't feel very fucking honored right now." The alien's head tilted at an unnatural angle, reminding Kyra of a curious bird. "Aggression? Good. That will serve you well in the trials to come." Before Kyra could demand answers, a mechanical arm descended from the ceiling. At its tip was a syringe filled with a swirling, iridescent liquid that seemed to glow from within. "Wait!" Kyra screamed, renewing her struggle against the restraints. "What is that? What are you doing to me?" The alien's expression didn't change. Kyra wasn't even sure it could change, but she sensed a hint of excitement, anticipation. "We are giving you a gift, Kyra Voss," it said, using her name for the first time. "The power to save your world." The syringe plunged into her arm, and Kyra's universe exploded into agony. Every cell in her body felt like it was being torn apart and reconstructed. She screamed until her throat was raw, and then screamed some more. As the pain reached a crescendo, Kyra heard the alien's voice one last time before darkness claimed her. "Welcome to Project Prometheus, Subject 37. Your transformation has begun." Zexilo, lead geneticist of the Varthax Dominion, watched with clinical detachment as the human female thrashed on the examination table. The screams were unfortunate but necessary. Evolution was rarely a painless process. "Vitals holding steady," his assistant Nixera reported. "Genetic restructuring at 17% and climbing." Zexilo's inner eyelids blinked rapidly. The closest the species came to expressing satisfaction. "Excellent. This one shows promise. Perhaps she will be the key to unlocking the human genome's full potential." Nixera's tendrils rippled, a sign of unease. "Is this truly necessary, lead geneticist?" The ethical implications of Dash. "Ethics." Zexilo interrupted, a rare note of emotion coloring his normally modulated speech. "The Hive cares nothing for ethics, Nixera. They will descend upon this sector within a galactic turn, devouring all in their path. If we do not prepare the humans, primitives though they may be, we condemn an entire species to extinction." He turned back to the writhing form of Subject 37. "No, we must push forward, no matter the cost, for in their salvation lies our own." As if in response to his words, Kyra's eyes snapped open, but they were no longer the warm brown they had been upon her arrival. Now they blazed with an unnatural, electric blue light. The first step on humanity's path to becoming the galaxy's most feared warriors had been taken, and there was no going back. Kyra's world had become a haze of pain, punctuated by brief moments of terrifying clarity. She'd lost all sense of time in this sterile hell. Days? Weeks? It could have been months for all she knew. The aliens, the Varthax, she'd learned they called themselves, subjected her to endless tests and injections. Each one left her feeling simultaneously stronger and more alien. Her body was changing in ways she couldn't comprehend, and it terrified her. Subject 37, report to Training Arena Delta, the grating, artificial voice commanded over hidden speakers. Kyra groaned, pushing herself off the too small cot in her cell. Her muscles ached, but there was a new strength thrumming beneath her skin. She caught a glimpse of herself in the reflective surface of the wall and barely recognized the person staring back. Her once average build had become lean and corded with muscle, but it was her eyes that gave her pause. That unnatural electric blue glow hadn't faded since. Since when? She couldn't remember. The door to her cell slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Two hulking figures waited outside, fellow humans, but so altered they barely looked apart anymore. Kyra had dubbed them Brick and Tank in her head. They never spoke, only grunted and gestured. As they marched her through the labyrinthine corridors, Kyra's enhanced senses picked up snippets of conversation from behind closed doors. Genetic compatibility at 89%. Aggression levels rising, but still within acceptable parameters. Potential psychic manifestation in Subject 42. Kyra filed away each scrap of information. The Varthax thought they were creating obedient super soldiers, but they'd made a critical mistake. They'd left her mind intact. And Kyra Voss was nobody's puppet. The training arena was a massive, circular chamber. Various obstacles and structures dotted the floor, creating a complex battleground. Kyra's escorts shoved her forward, the door sealing behind her with an ominous thud. Begin combat simulation, that same emotionless voice announced. A figure materialized across the arena, another altered human, but one Kyra didn't recognize. His eyes glowed the same eerie blue as hers, and a feral grin split his face. "I am Darius," he growled, his voice unnaturally deep. "And I'm going to break you, little girl." Something primal awakened in Kyra. The constant fear and confusion of the past weeks, months, crystallized into pure, white-hot rage. She didn't want this. She never asked for this. But if they were going to force her to fight, then by God, she was going to win. Darius charged, moving faster than any normal human had a right to. But to Kyra's enhanced perception, he might as well have been underwater. She sidestepped at the last second, her fist connecting with his ribcage with a sickening crack. The larger man stumbled, genuine shock registering on his face. "How? They said you were untrained." Kyra's lips curled into a savage smile. Guess they were wrong. What followed was a symphony of violence. Kyra moved with a grace and power she'd never known, her body responding to commands her mind hadn't even fully formed yet. Darius was strong, but Kyra was relentless. When it was over, Darius lay unconscious at her feet. Kyra stood over him, chest heaving, knuckles bloodied. She felt alive, more than she ever had before, and it terrified her. Slow clapping echoed through the arena. Kyra whirled to see one of the Varthax, Zexilo, she recalled, observing from a raised platform. "Impressive, Subject 37." The alien's mismatched voice grated. "You've exceeded all projected parameters." Kyra spat a mouthful of blood onto the arena floor. "I told you before," she snarled. "My name is KYRA." Zexilo's head tilted in that unnerving, bird-like manner. "Names are irrelevant. You are becoming something more. The next stage of human evolution." "FUCK your evolution," Kyra shouted. "What gives you the right to play God with us?" For the first time, she saw something akin to emotion flicker across the alien's features. Was it concern? You misunderstand Kyra Voss, Zexilo said softly. We are not your enemies. We are trying to save you. Before Kyra could demand answers, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red emergency lights bathed everything in a hellish glow. Containment breach in Sector 7, a panicked voice, an actual Varthax this time, not the AI, shouted over the comms. Subject 66 has dashed, the transmission cut off in a burst of static. Zexilo's massive eyes widened in what could only be fear. No, it's too soon. They're not ready. Kyra's enhanced hearing picked up distant screams and the sound of tearing metal. Whatever had broken loose, it was coming their way. Fuss, what's happening? She demanded. Zexilo turned that unsettling gaze on her. The future of your species, Kyra Voss, and quite possibly its doom. As if to punctuate his words, an inhuman roar echoed through the facility. Kyra felt it in her bones, and for the first time since her abduction, she yearned for the simple life she'd left behind. Whatever was coming, humanity wasn't ready for it. The inhuman roar grew louder, accompanied by the screeching of torn metal and the panicked shouts of Varthax scientists. Kyra's enhanced senses were in overdrive, every nerve crackling with adrenaline and something else, something alien. We need to move, now. Zexilo's normally modulated voice had taken on an edge of urgency. The Varthax scientist grabbed Kyra's arm, his touch sending an electric jolt through her system. Let go of me, Kyra snarled, yanking her arm free with strength that surprised even her. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what the hell is going on. Another roar, closer this time. The very walls of the facility seemed to tremble. Zexilo's massive eyes blinked rapidly. Subject 66, Raxon. He was our first success, but the genetic modifications, they went too far. He's become unstable, volatile. What are you saying? Kyra demanded, even as a part of her already knew the horrifying answer. We've created a monster, Zexilo whispered, and if we don't stop him, he'll tear this facility and everyone in it apart. As if summoned by the alien's words, the far wall of the training arena exploded inward. Through the dust and debris emerged a figure that made Kyra's blood run cold. He had once been human, but now he was something out of a nightmare. 8 feet of corded muscle and rage, with skin that rippled and shifted like living metal. But it was his eyes that truly terrified Kyra. They glowed with the same electric blue as her own, but there was no humanity left in them. Only hunger and fury. Raxon, Zexilo called out, his multi-tone voice wavering. You must calm yourself. The process isn't complete. The creature that had once been Subject 66, Raxon, turned those terrible eyes on the Varthax scientist. A guttural growl escaped lips pulled back in a rictus grin. No more tests. Raxon's voice was a bass rumble that Kyra felt in her chest. No more pain. Only freedom. He lunged forward with impossible speed. Kyra's body reacted on pure instinct, shoving Zexilo out of the way and meeting Raxon's charge head-on. The impact was like being hit by a freight train. Kyra felt ribs crack, but somehow she held her ground. Her hands locked with Raxon's massive paws, muscles straining as they grappled. How? Raxon's eyes widened in surprise. You're like me. Kyra gritted her teeth, feeling something shift inside her. The constant ache she'd felt since her abduction suddenly intensified. Not like you, she managed to growl. I'm still human. With a surge of strength she didn't know she possessed, Kyra hurled Raxon across the arena. He crashed into a wall, leaving a Raxon-shaped indent in the metal. But the momentary victory was short-lived. Kyra collapsed to her knees, her body racked with spasms. Every cell felt like it was on fire. What's happening to me? She gasped, looking to Zexilo in desperation. The Varthax scientist's expression was unreadable. The final stage of your transformation, Kyra Voss. Your genetic potential is being unlocked. Kyra screamed as another wave of agony tore through her. She could feel her body changing, muscles densing, bones reinforcing. Her senses sharpened to an almost painful degree. She could hear the frantic heartbeats of every being in the room. Raxon pulled himself from the wreckage of the wall, his bestial face twisted in a snarl. "You hurt me," he roared. "I'll tear you apart." He charged again, but this time Kyra was ready. She met his rush with one of her own, moving faster than she ever thought possible. Her fist connected with Raxon's jaw with a thunderous crack, the shockwave from the impact shattering nearby equipment. What followed was a battle that defied human comprehension. Two genetically enhanced beings, locked in combat that pushed the very limits of what was physically possible. Walls crumbled, the floor buckled beneath their feet, and with each passing moment, Kyra felt herself growing stronger. But Raxon was far from defeated. He fought with the unrestrained fury of a caged animal finally unleashed. Kyra realized with growing dread that she couldn't match his raw power. "Not yet. You can't win," Raxon bellowed, pinning Kyra against a shattered wall. "I am the pinnacle of human evolution." Kyra struggled against his grip, feeling the metal wall crumple behind her. "You're wrong," she managed to gasp. "You've lost what makes us human. Our humanity is our strength." Something flickered in Raxon's rage-filled eyes. A moment of recognition, but before Kyra could capitalize on it, alarms blared throughout the facility. "Warning," an emotionless AI voice announced. "Containment protocols breached. Initiating facility-wide purge in T-10 minutes." Raxon's grip loosened, confusion replacing fury on his bestial features. "Purge? No! They can't take this away from me. I won't go back to being weak." He released Kyra, turning his attention to the nearest computer terminal. With a roar of frustration, he began tearing at the machinery. Kyra slumped to the ground, her body aching but already beginning to heal at an accelerated rate. She turned to find Zexilo, only to see the Varthak scientist frantically working at a still-functional console. "What's happening?" Kyra demanded, her voice stronger now. "What's this purge?" Zexilo's fingers danced across the alien interface. "A failsafe," he explained, not looking up. "If the subjects become uncontrollable, the entire facility is sterilized. No trace left behind." Kyra's eyes widened in horror. "You'd kill everyone. Your own people? The risk of our research falling into the wrong hands is too great." Zexilo's voice was flat, but Kyra sensed a tremor of regret. The fate of multiple species hangs in the balance. "To hell with that," Kyra snarled. She grabbed the alien's arm, forcing him to face her. "You did this to us. You don't get to just erase your mistakes." For a long moment, Zexilo's alien eyes met Kyra's glowing blue ones. Then, to her shock, he nodded. "You're right," the Varthak said softly. "We must face the consequences of our actions. But Kyra, you don't understand the greater threat. The reason we dash." His words were cut off as Raxon let out another earth-shaking roar. "I'll destroy it all," the monstrous being bellowed. "No one controls me." Kyra watched in horror as Raxon began systematically demolishing every piece of equipment in sight. "If he damaged the wrong system, we have to stop him," she said, turning back to Zexilo. "And then you're going to tell me everything. No more secrets." The Varthak scientist nodded solemnly. "Agreed. But Kyra, be careful. Your transformation isn't complete. Push too hard, and you risk losing yourself, like Raxon did." Kyra felt a chill run down her spine, but she steeled herself. "I won't let that happen," she said, more to herself than to Zexilo. "I'm still me. No matter what you've done to my body, my mind is my own." With that, she turned to face the rampaging Raxon. The countdown to purge ticked away in the background, and somewhere in the back of her mind, Kyra couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger conflict, one that would determine the fate not just of humanity, but of the entire galaxy. T-8 minutes to facility-wide purge. The AI's emotionless voice echoed through the chaos, a grim countdown to oblivion. Kyra's mind raced, adrenaline and her newly enhanced physiology pushing her thoughts to lightning speed. Raxon continued his rampage, each blow threatening to rupture something vital. Kyra knew she had to end this fast. HY! She shouted, her voice carrying an otherworldly resonance that surprised even her. Raxon, you want freedom? You have to live to enjoy it. The behemoth paused, turning those rage-filled eyes on her. Live? Yes, live. Destroy them, then free. Kyra took a cautious step forward, hands raised. We can both be free, but we have to get out of here first. This place is going to be vaporized in minutes. For a moment, a flicker of humanity seemed to shine through Raxon's bestial features. Then his face contorted in fury once more. Lies! More tricks! Won't go back to cage. He charged, moving even faster than before. But Kyra was ready. She sidestepped at the last second, using Raxon's own momentum against him. As he stumbled past, she delivered a devastating blow to the back of his head. The impact echoed like a thunderclap. Raxon went down hard, the floor cracking beneath him. He didn't get up. Kyra stood over him, chest heaving. She'd done it, but at what cost? She could feel the changes within her, power thrumming through every cell. It would be so easy to give in, to embrace the fury like Raxon had. Kyra, Zexilo's voice snapped her back to reality. We must go. Now. She shook her head, clearing the haze of battle lust. What about him? She asked, gesturing to Raxon's prone form. The Varthak scientist's expression was unreadable. We cannot risk dash. We're not leaving him, Kyra interrupted, her tone brooking no argument. I didn't fight to save him just to let him die. Zexilo's inner eyelids blinked rapidly, but he nodded. Very well, but we must hurry. This way. As they ran through the labyrinthine corridors of the facility, Kyra hefting Raxon's unconscious bulk with startling ease. Alarms blared and emergency lights bathed everything in an eerie red glow. They passed other test subjects, some human, some decidedly not, being herded by panicked Varthak scientists. What about them? Kyra demanded, feeling a pang of guilt. Other evacuation protocols are in place, Zexilo assured her, though his tone held a note of uncertainty. We must focus on our own survival now. They rounded a corner and came face to face with a group of heavily armed Varthak security forces. For a moment, everyone froze. Intruders! One of the aliens shouted, raising a weapon that hummed with barely contained energy. Halt or be dash. Kyra didn't let him finish. With a growl that was more animal than human, she launched herself at the security team. What followed was a blur of motion and violence that defied description. When it was over, Kyra stood amid a tangle of unconscious Varthaks, her chest heaving. She stared at her hands in a mixture of awe and horror. What am I? She whispered. Zexilo placed a hand on her shoulder, the touch sending an electric jolt through her system. You are the future, Kyra Voss. But we must ensure that future survives the next 5 minutes. Right, the purge. Kyra nodded, shoving her existential crisis aside for the moment. Lead the way. They pressed on, navigating through increasingly damaged sections of the facility. Other test subjects had clearly broken free, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. T-minus 2 minutes to facility-wide purge. We're not going to make it, Kyra shouted as they reached a sealed blast door. Beyond it, she could see stars. Were they in space? Zexilo's fingers danced across a nearby control panel. We will make it. But Kyra, you must understand what awaits beyond this door. It may be more dangerous than anything you face here. Kyra's eyes narrowed. What aren't you telling me? What was all this for? The Varthak scientist's massive eyes met hers. A threat beyond imagining. A hive mind species that devours entire galaxies. We needed weapons. We needed you. Before Kyra could process this bombshell, The blast doors began to slide open. A rush of stale air washed over them. "Go!" Zexilo shouted. "The escape pods are just ahead. I must remain to ensure the purge destroys all sensitive data." "What? No! You're coming with us." Kyra grabbed the alien's arm. "You owe me answers." Zexilo gently but firmly removed her hand. "And you shall have them, but not now. Go! Kyra Voss, fulfill the potential we saw in you. Save your species, and perhaps all of us." With a final, inscrutable look, Zexilo slammed his hand down on a console. The blast doors began to close once more. "No!" Kyra screamed, but it was too late. She was left staring at cold metal, Raxon's unconscious form at her feet. T-minus 30 seconds to facility-wide purge. The AI's voice jolted her into action. Kyra scooped up Raxon and sprinted down the corridor. She could see the escape pods ahead, their hatches invitingly open. Come on, she muttered, willing her enhanced body to move faster. 10, 9, 8. Kyra reached the nearest pod, practically throwing Raxon inside before diving in herself. 3, 2, 1. Her hand slammed down on the launch controls. Purge initiated. The pod shot away from the facility with bone-rattling force. Through the small viewport, Kyra watched as a massive structure that had been her prison, and the site of her transformation, erupted in a silent explosion of light and debris. As the remnants of the Varthax facility receded into the star-speckled void, Kyra slumped against the pod's wall. Her body ached, her mind reeled, and questions swirled like a maelstrom. What had she truly become? What was this galactic threat Zexilo spoke of? And perhaps most pressingly, how the hell was she going to explain all this when she got back to Earth? Beside her, Raxon stirred, letting out a low groan. Kyra tense, ready for another fight. But when his eyes opened, they were clear, human, confused. Where am I? He mumbled. What happened? Kyra let out a bitter laugh. That, she said, is a very long story. As the escape pod hurtled through the inky blackness of space, carrying two genetically enhanced humans towards an uncertain future, Kyra couldn't shake the feeling that their trials were only just beginning. The fate of humanity, perhaps the fate of the entire galaxy, now rested on the shoulders of those the Varthax had transformed. And Kyra Voss was determined to rise to that challenge, no matter the cost. The escape pod hurtled through the void, a tiny speck of life amidst the vast emptiness of space. Inside, Kyra Voss struggled to come to terms with the monumental shift her life had taken in the span of, how long had it been? Days? Weeks? Beside her, Raxon stirred again, his massive frame barely fitting in the cramped confines of the pod. His eyes, once filled with bestial rage, now held confusion and a hint of fear. I remember, he muttered, his voice a low rumble. The pain, the anger. Oh God, what did I do? Kyra placed a hand on his shoulder, feeling the raw power thrumming beneath his skin. It wasn't your fault, Raxon. They did this to us. Changed us. Raxon's eyes met hers, recognition dawning. You fought me. Stopped me. How? A bitter laugh escaped Kyra's lips. Honestly, I have no fucking clue. I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of this. As if to punctuate her words, a warning light began flashing on the pod's control panel. A shrill alarm filled the small space. Warning, oxygen levels critical. Estimated depletion in 47 minutes. Shit, Kyra slammed her fist against the console, leaving a sizable dent. Of course they didn't bother to fully stock an escape pod. Probably figured we'd never make it this far. Raxon's eyes widened in panic. We're going to suffocate. After everything, this is how it ends. Kyra felt a surge of something, not quite anger, but a fierce determination. No, she growled. We didn't come this far just to die floating in space. There has to be a way out of this. She closed her eyes, forcing herself to focus. Her enhanced senses, previously overwhelmed by the chaos of their escape, now picked up on subtle details she'd missed before. The faint hum of the pod systems, the barely perceptible vibration of engines. Kyra's eyes snapped open. "We're not adrift," she said, a hint of excitement creeping into her voice. "This pod is on a pre-programmed course. But to where?" She turned her attention to the control panel, her mind racing at superhuman speeds. The alien symbols were incomprehensible, but there was a logic to their arrangement, a pattern. Come on, Kyra muttered, her fingers dancing across the controls. "If I can just—" Suddenly, the main view screen flickered to life. A star map materialized, showing their current position and a destination. Raxon leaned in, his massive frame dwarfing Kyra's. "Is that Earth?" Kyra breathed. "We're headed home." A moment of relief washed over them both. Then reality came crashing back. "But we'll never make it with the oxygen running out," Raxon said, his voice heavy with resignation. Kyra shook her head, a fierce grin spreading across her face. "Maybe we don't need to." Before Raxon could question her, Kyra's hands became a blur of motion across the control panel. Warnings flashed and alarms blared, but she ignored them all. "What are you doing?" Raxon demanded. "Sending a message," Kyra replied through gritted teeth. "And praying someone's listening." With a final, decisive motion, she slammed her palm down on what she hoped was the transmit button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, transmission successful. Message repeating on all frequencies. Kyra slumped back, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Now we wait. And hope. Raxon looked at her with a mixture of awe and confusion. "What did you send?" "Our coordinates, our trajectory, and a warning." Kyra's eyes met his, a steely determination shining in their electric blue depths. "I told them what was done to us, what's coming for Earth, and that they need to be ready." Raxon nodded slowly. "And if no one picks up the message?" Kyra's gaze turned to the stars visible through the pod's small viewport. "Then we use every last second we have left figuring out how to survive. We owe it to everyone back home to at least try." As if in response to her words, a new alarm began to sound. But this one was different. It was proximity alert. Vessel approaching at high speed. Kyra and Raxon exchanged a look of mingled hope and apprehension. Had Earth sent a rescue? Or was it something else entirely? The answer came moments later as a massive ship dropped out of what could only be described as a hole in space itself. It dwarfed their tiny pod, its sleek design unlike anything Kyra had ever seen in sci-fi movies or NASA broadcasts. A beam of energy lanced out from the ship, enveloping their pod. Kyra tensed, ready for, well, anything, but instead of destruction, she felt a gentle tug. "They're bringing us in," Raxon said, his voice filled with wonder. As the pod was drawn into the belly of the enormous vessel, Kyra's mind raced. Friend or foe, savior or new captor. There was no way to know. "Whatever happens," she said, turning to Raxon, "we stick together. Got it? We're probably the only ones who understand what the other's been through." Raxon nodded solemnly. "Together," he agreed. The pod shuddered as it passed through some kind of energy field. Kyra's enhanced senses picked up a change in air pressure, an atmosphere, breathable air. With a final, metallic clang, the pod came to rest. For a moment, all was silent. Then, the hatch began to open with a pneumatic hiss. Kyra and Raxon tense, ready for a fight. But nothing could have prepared them for what they saw. Standing before them was a being that defied description, vaguely humanoid, but composed of what looked like living crystal. It pulsed with inner light, and when it spoke, its voice resonated in Kyra's mind rather than her ears. "Greetings, children of Earth," the crystalline being intoned. "We have been expecting you." Kyra blinked in shocked silence for a moment before finding her voice. You have?" The being's form shimmered, and Kyra got the distinct impression it was amused. Indeed, the VAR Thax's meddling has not gone unnoticed. But perhaps it was necessary. The being's gaze, though it had no discernible eyes, seemed to pierce right through Kyra. You have been changed, Kyra Voss and Raxon Steele. But your trials are far from over. The enemy approaches, and Earth, nay, the entire galaxy, will need champions. Kyra felt a chill run down her spine. The enemy, you mean the hive minds Exilo mentioned? The crystalline being's form pulsed with what might have been approval. You are perceptive. Good. You will need that in the trials to come. Raxon stepped forward, his earlier timidity replaced by a quiet strength. What are you, and why help us? We are the Luminari, the being replied, guardians of balance in this sector of the galaxy. And as for why we help, the being's form shimmered again, resolving into a shape that was startlingly human. Because long ago, we were you, and we remember what it means to fight for one's home. Kyra's mind reeled. The implications were staggering. But one thing was clear. Their journey, their transformation, was far from over. So what happens now? She asked, straightening to her full height. The Luminari being's form rippled with what could only be described as anticipation. Now, Kyra Voss, you learn. You train. You become what you were meant to be. Its gaze swept over both her and Raxon. The hunters have become the hunted. And you, children of Earth, you will be the ones to turn the tide. As the words echoed in her mind, Kyra felt a surge of purpose. Whatever came next, whatever battles lay ahead, she knew one thing for certain. The hunt was on, and this time, humanity would be the predator, not the prey. The Luminari vessel hummed with an energy that Kyra could feel in her very bones. As she and Raxon followed their crystalline guide through corridors that seemed to shift and change with each step, Kyra's mind raced with questions. I don't understand, she finally blurted out. If you're so powerful, why haven't you stopped this hive mind threat yourselves? Why rely on experiments like us? The Luminari being paused, its form shimmering as it turned to face them. When it spoke, its mental voice carried a weight of ages. The balance of the galaxy is delicate. We cannot interfere directly without risking far greater catastrophe. But you are outside that equation. Raxon frowned, his massive frame tense with barely contained energy. So, we're just pawns to you? Like we were to the Varthax. For a moment, the corridor around them seemed to darken, as if reflecting the Luminari's mood. And the being's voice resonated with surprising emotion. You are hope, potential, the spark that might ignite a fire capable of pushing back the darkness. The walls around them suddenly became transparent, revealing a vista of stars and swirling nebulae that took Kyra's breath away. But amidst the beauty, she saw darkness, vast swathes of empty space where stars should have been. Behold, the Luminari intoned, the feeding grounds of the Unity. Kyra felt a chill run down her spine. The Unity? The hive mind of which she spoke, a consciousness spanning millions of worlds, consuming all in its path, and it hungers for Earth. Images flashed through Kyra's mind. Entire planets being stripped bare, civilizations crumbling, a relentless tide of something advancing across the galaxy. Oh my God, she whispered, feeling the weight of this revelation crushing down on her. Raxon's face had gone pale, his earlier bravado replaced by grim determination. How? How do we stop something like that? The Luminari's form pulsed with what might have been approval. That, children of Earth, is what you must learn. Come. They continued their journey through the ever-shifting vessel, finally emerging into a vast chamber that defied the laws of physics as Kyra understood them. It seemed to stretch on forever, filled with impossible landscapes and structures that hurt her eyes to look at directly. This is where your training begins, the Luminari announced. Here, you will push the limits of your new forms. Discover abilities you never dreamed possible. As if on cue, portions of the chamber began to shift, forming obstacle courses, combat arenas, and stranger constructs that Kyra couldn't even begin to comprehend. Wait! Kyra held up a hand. Before we start, I need to know, what about Earth? Our families? They must think we're... The Luminari's form shimmered in what might have been sympathy. Time flows differently here. What feels like months to you will be but moments on Earth. When you return, little time will have passed. Kyra nodded, a weight lifting from her shoulders. Then the rest of the Luminari's statement sank in. Months, at least, the being confirmed. The Unity approaches, but we have some time yet. You must be prepared. Raxon stepped forward, cracking his knuckles with a sound like boulders colliding. Then let's get started. I've got a lot of rage to work out. For the first time, Kyra saw a flicker of concern cross the Luminari's crystalline features. Caution, Raxon Steel. The anger that fuels you is a double-edged sword. Learn to master it, or it will master you. Kyra placed a hand on Raxon's arm, feeling the raw power thrumming beneath his skin. We'll figure it out together, she said softly. That's why there are two of us, right? The Luminari's form pulsed with approval. Indeed, balance in all things. Now, let us begin. What followed was a training montage that would have put every sci-fi movie to shame. Kyra and Raxon pushed their enhanced bodies to limits they never knew existed, and then beyond. They learned to harness the raw energy that now coursed through their veins, manifesting it in ways that defied explanation. Kyra discovered she could manipulate gravitational fields, while Raxon's already immense strength grew to truly godlike proportions. But it wasn't just physical training. The Luminari taught them about the broader galaxy, its history, its politics, and the delicate balance that kept chaos at bay. Kyra absorbed knowledge at a rate that would have been impossible for her old self, her enhanced mind making connections and leaps of logic that startled even their crystalline teachers. Through it all, Kyra and Raxon grew closer. The shared trauma of their transformation, combined with the weight of the responsibility now placed on their shoulders, forged a bond stronger than steel. They became more than partners. They became family. As the training progressed, however, troubling signs began to emerge. Raxon's control over his anger improved, but there were moments when the beast within threatened to break free. And Kyra found herself wrestling with a growing sense of detachment from her humanity. The power was intoxicating, and more than once she caught herself wondering if returning to Earth was even necessary. Why go back to being normal when she could reshape the very fabric of space-time? It was during one of these moments of doubt that the Luminari summoned them to the vessel's command center. The crystalline beings had never seemed agitated before, but now their forms flickered with barely contained energy. The Unity. The lead Luminari announced without preamble. IT has accelerated its advance. Earth will be reached far sooner than we anticipated. Kyra felt her blood run cold. How soon? The answer came not in words, but in a holographic display that materialized before them. It showed the Milky Way galaxy, with a massive dark mass encroaching from one side. As they watched, tendrils of something reached out, enveloping entire star systems. No! Raxon breathed, his eyes wide with horror. It's unstoppable. But Kyra's enhanced mind was already racing, analyzing the data before her. She saw patterns, trajectories, weaknesses. Not unstoppable, she said, her voice filled with a confidence she didn't entirely feel. Just really fucking difficult. The Luminari's form pulsed with what might have been pride. You see it then? The path to victory. Kyra nodded slowly. I think so, but it's going to take everything we've got, and then some. Raxon placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch gentler than one would expect from his massive frame. Whatever it takes, he rumbled. We didn't come this far to fail now. As the holographic display zoomed in on Earth, beautiful, fragile, unaware of the cosmic horror bearing down upon it, Kyra felt a surge of determination unlike anything she'd ever known. All right, she said, her eyes glowing with an inner fire. Let's save the world. The Luminari's form shimmered with approval. And was that anticipation? The final phase of your training begins now, the crystalline being intoned. When it is complete, you will return to Earth. And then, the being's mental voice took on a note of grim finality. Then the real war begins. As Kyra and Raxon exchange determined looks, the weight of the galaxy's fate settling on their shoulders, one thing became crystal clear. The experiments that had transformed them into super soldiers were just the beginning. The real test of humanity's potential was yet to come. And failure was not an option. The final phase of training was brutal. Kyra and Raxon pushed themselves beyond what they thought possible. Their enhanced bodies and minds stretched to breaking point, and then beyond. The Luminari were relentless taskmasters, driving them with an urgency that bordered on desperation. Faster, the crystalline beings would intone as Kyra manipulated gravitational fields to dodge energy blasts that could vaporize planets. Stronger, they demanded as Raxon shattered asteroids with his bare hands, each impact sending shockwaves through space itself. But it wasn't just physical prowess they honed. The Luminari delved deep into their psyches, forcing Kyra and Raxon to confront the darkness within. The rage, the fear, the creeping sense of otherness that threatened to consume their humanity. One particularly grueling session left Kyra gasping on her knees, her mind reeling from visions of possible futures, each more horrific than the last. "I can't," she choked out, feeling for the first time since her transformation that she might have reached her limit. "It's too much. I'm not strong enough." Raxon, his own massive frame trembling with exertion, knelt beside her. His touch was surprisingly gentle for hands that could crush diamonds. "Yes, you are," he rumbled, his voice a low thunder. "We are. Together." The lead Luminari's form shimmered, its mental voice tinged with, "Was that pride?" "You learn well," it intoned. "Unity is strength. It is what makes you different from the enemy you face." Kyra looked up, her electric blue eyes blazing with renewed determination. "The unity isn't really united, is it? It's just consumed, assimilated." The Luminari's form pulsed with approval. "Precisely. And therein lies its weakness, and your greatest strength." As Kyra struggled to her feet, leaning on Raxon for support, a thought struck her. "Wait, you keep saying not US. You're not coming with us, are you?" The chamber fell silent, the usual hum of energy fading to a whisper. When the Luminari spoke again, its mental voice was heavy with what could only be described as regret. "We cannot. Our presence on Earth would upset balances far beyond your comprehension. This fight, it must be humanity's alone." Raxon's face darkened, a flash of his old rage surfacing. "So you trained us, made us into weapons, and now you're just going to send us off to die?" "And oh," the Luminari's response was firm. "We have given you the tools to forge your own destiny. The choice of how to use them, that remains yours." Kyra placed a calming hand on Raxon's arm, feeling the tension thrumming through him. "They're right," she said softly. "This was always going to come down to us, to humanity." She turned back to the Luminari, her spine straightening as she embraced the mantle of responsibility that had been thrust upon her. "What's our next move?" The crystalline being's form shimmered, and suddenly the chamber around them transformed. They stood on a holographic representation of Earth, teeming with life and blissfully unaware of the cosmic horror bearing down upon it. "You must prepare your world," the Luminari instructed. "The Unity's advanced forces will arrive soon. You must build a resistance capable of withstanding their onslaught." Raxon frowned, his earlier anger replaced by tactical focus. "But how? We can't exactly walk into the UN and say, 'Hey, super soldiers here. Alien invasion coming. Get ready.'" Kyra's enhanced mind was already racing, analyzing possibilities and discarding plans almost faster than she could form them. Then, a spark of inspiration. We start small, she said, her eyes lighting up with the thrill of a forming strategy. Find others like us. There have to be more test subjects who escaped or were released. Build a network, and then you reveal yourselves, the Luminari finished. When the first wave hits, when the world can no longer deny the threat it faces, Kyra nodded, a grim smile playing at her lips. Exactly. We become humanity's ace in the hole, the weapon they didn't know they had. Raxon's massive hand came to rest on her shoulder, a gesture of solidarity that spoke volumes. I'm with you, he rumbled. All the way. The Luminaries formed pulse with what might have been approval, or perhaps sadness. The time has come, then. You must return to your world. As the holographic Earth faded away, replaced by the familiar contours of the Luminari vessel, Kyra felt a sudden pang of, was it homesickness? After everything she'd been through, everything she'd become, the thought of returning to her old life seemed almost surreal. Will we remember? She asked suddenly. All of this? The training, the knowledge you've given us. The Luminari's mental voice was gentle. You will remember what you need to. The rest, it will come when the time is right. Kyra nodded, steeling herself for what was to come. She turned to Raxon, seeing her own mix of determination and apprehension mirrored in his eyes. Ready to save the world? She asked, managing a small smile. Raxon's answering grin was fierce. Born ready. As they made their way to the vessel's teleportation chamber, the Luminari's final words echoed in their minds. Remember, children of Earth, you carry within you the hopes of not just your world, but countless others. The unity can be stopped, but only if humanity stands united. Find your allies, build your resistance, and when the time comes, the crystalline being's form shimmered one last time, resolving into a shape startlingly human. Fight like hell. With a blinding flash of light and a sensation like being torn apart and reassembled at the atomic level, Kyra and Raxon vanished from the Luminari vessel. Their destination, Earth. Their mission, save humanity. Their greatest weapon, each other. As they materialized in a nondescript alley in what Kyra recognized as New York City, the weight of their task settled upon them like a physical force. The bustling sounds of the city, once so familiar, now almost alien, washed over them. Kyra took a deep breath, her enhanced senses immediately cataloging 1,000 details she would have missed before. She turned to Raxon, saw the same mix of determination and trepidation in his eyes that she felt herself. Well, she said, squaring her shoulders. Let's get to work. As they stepped out onto the crowded sidewalk, blending seamlessly into the flow of humanity, one thought echoed in both their minds. The resistance begins now, and with it, humanity's last best hope for survival. Months had passed since Kyra and Raxon's return to Earth. Months of careful planning, covert recruitment, and preparation for a war that the rest of the world didn't even know was coming. They had found others, more escaped test subjects, each with their own unique abilities. There was Zephyr, who could manipulate the very air around her. Nexus, whose technopathic abilities made him a master of information warfare. And Sci-Fi, whose shape-shifting capabilities had proven invaluable in their clandestine operations. Together, they formed the core of what Kyra had dubbed Project Prometheus, humanity's hidden guardians against the coming storm. But time was running out. We've got movement, Nexus announced, his eyes glazed over as he interfaced directly with their makeshift command center systems. Multiple anomalies entering the solar system. It's starting. Kyra felt a chill run down her spine. This was it, the moment they'd been preparing for. She turned to Raxon, saw the same mix of anticipation and dread mirrored in his eyes. Alert the team, she ordered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. It's time to go public. As alarms began to blare in their hidden base, Kyra allowed herself a moment of reflection. How far they'd come from those confused, terrified test subjects in a Varthax facility. Now, They were humanity's first and last line of defense against an enemy beyond imagination. Kyra, Raxon's rumbling voice snapped her back to the present. You ready for this? She managed a grim smile. Born ready, big guy. Let's go save the world. The next few hours were chaos incarnate. As the Unity's advanced forces made planetfall, the world's government scrambled to respond. Panic spread like wildfire as reports of impossible creatures and physics-defying attacks flooded every news channel. And then, Project Prometheus revealed itself. Kyra stood before the United Nations Security Council, her enhanced presence commanding attention even before she spoke. The room fell silent as she laid out the truth. The experiments, the Varthax, the Luminari, and the existential threat now knocking at Earth's door. I know this sounds insane, she concluded, her voice carrying an otherworldly resonance. But look outside. Look at what's happening. We are humanity's best hope for survival, and we need your help. For a moment, stunned silence reigned. Then, my God, the Secretary General breathed. It's all true, isn't it? We're at war. Kyra nodded solemnly. We are, but it's a war we can win if we stand together. As if to punctuate her words, an explosion rocked the building. Through the windows, they could see a massive, writhing something tearing its way through the New York skyline. That's our cue, Raxon growled, cracking his knuckles with a sound like boulders colliding. Kyra turned back to the assembled world leaders. Make your choice. Stand with us or stand aside. But whatever you do, do it fast. With that, she and Raxon burst through the windows, plummeting towards the chaos below. As they fell, Kyra manipulated the gravitational fields around them, guiding their descent with impossible precision. They landed in the midst of a war zone. The streets of New York had become a battleground, with conventional military forces struggling against creatures that defied description, writhing masses of tentacles and teeth, beings of pure energy, and through it all, a palpable sense of wrongness that made Kyra's enhanced senses scream in protest. Remember the plan, she shouted to Raxon over the din of battle. We hold the line here. Give the others time to activate the planetary defense grid. Raxon nodded, his massive frame already tensing for combat. Let's show these hive-mind bastards what real unity looks like. What followed was a battle that would be remembered for generations. Kyra and Raxon moved like forces of nature unleashed, their enhanced abilities on full display for a world that watched in awe and terror. Kyra manipulated gravity itself, sending Unity forces flying or crushing them beneath impossible weight. Raxon's strength proved truly godlike as he tore through the alien ranks, each blow sending shockwaves through the very fabric of reality. And they weren't alone. Across the globe, other members of Project Prometheus revealed themselves. Zephyr created tornadoes in the heart of Tokyo, scattering Unity dropships like leaves in the wind. Nexus hijacked their communication networks, sowing confusion and chaos in their ranks. Sci-Fi infiltrated their command structure, feeding false information that led entire battalions into carefully laid traps. But the Unity was relentless. For every creature they destroyed, two more took its place. The hive mind adapted with terrifying speed, learning from each defeat and pressing its advantage with cold, alien logic. As the battle raged on, Kyra found herself face-to-face with what could only be described as a general of the Unity forces. A massive, pulsating thing that radiated malevolent intelligence. You cannot win. Its voice echoed in her mind, a cacophony of countless assimilated consciousnesses. We are Legion. We are infinite. We are Unity. Kyra felt rage bubble up within her. Rage at what had been done to her. Rage at the threat to her world. But mixed with that rage was something else. Something powerful. Hope. You're wrong, she snarled, her eyes blazing with inner fire. You're not Unity. You're consumption. You don't understand what real unity is. She gestured to the humans fighting alongside her, soldiers and civilians alike, standing shoulder to shoulder against impossible odds. "This is unity," Kyra declared. "Different minds, different bodies, coming together by choice. Not assimilation, not consumption, but true, willing cooperation." The creature seemed to recoil, confusion radiating from its alien form. "Impossible," it insisted. "Inefficient. Chaos." Kyra's lips curled into a fierce grin. "Exactly. Beautiful, glorious chaos. The kind of chaos that breeds innovation, adaptation, humanity." With a primal scream, she unleashed the full extent of her powers. Gravity itself bent to her will, reality warping around her. The Unity General was torn apart, its component pieces scattered across multiple dimensions. As the creature's death throes sent psychic shockwaves through the Unity's forces, Kyra felt a surge of something. Power? Understanding? For a brief, transcendent moment, she glimpsed the true nature of the conflict they were engaged in. Not just a war for survival, but a war for the very soul of the universe. Order versus chaos. Homogeneity versus diversity. Consumption versus cooperation. And humanity. Humanity was a wild card that could tip the balance. The moment passed, and Kyra found herself back in the thick of battle. But something had changed. The tide was turning. Across the globe, humanity was rallying. Inspired by the examples set by Project Prometheus, ordinary people were discovering extraordinary courage within themselves. As the sun began to set on the first day of what would come to be known as the Unity War, Kyra allowed herself a moment of hope. They had survived the initial onslaught. They had revealed themselves to the world. And most importantly, they had proven that humanity, in all its chaotic, beautiful diversity, could stand united against any threat. But as she watched Raxon single-handedly topple a Unity warship, as reports came in of victories and losses from around the globe, Kyra knew one thing with absolute certainty. This was only the beginning. The real war, the war for the fate of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy, was just getting started. And Kyra Voss, once an ordinary woman, now the linchpin of humanity's resistance, was ready to fight with every enhanced cell in her body. For Earth, for humanity, for the right to choose their own destiny. The battle raged on, and with it, the hope for a future free from the Unity's grasp. The dawn broke over a world forever changed. Kyra stood atop the ruins of what had once been the United Nations building, her enhanced vision taking in the devastation that stretched as far as the eye could see. New York, once a symbol of human achievement, now bore the scars of a battle beyond imagination. But amidst the destruction, there was life. People emerging from shelters, joining the cleanup efforts. The indomitable human spirit, refusing to be broken. Quite a view, isn't it? Raxon's rumbling voice came from behind her. Kyra turned to see her partner, his massive frame silhouetted against the rising sun. Despite the numerous wounds he'd sustained in the battle, he stood tall, a living testament to humanity's newfound strength. "We did it," Kyra said, her voice a mix of awe and exhaustion. "We actually did it." Raxon's lips curled into a grim smile. "Round one, maybe, but the war's far from over." As if to punctuate his words, Kyra's calm unit crackled to life. Nexus's voice, tense with urgency, filled her ear. "Kyra, we've got a situation. You need to see this. Now." The makeshift command center was a hive of activity. Screens displayed news feeds from around the globe, each telling the same story. Humanity united in the face of an alien threat, inspired by the actions of Project Prometheus. But it was the central holographic display that commanded everyone's attention. "What am I looking at, Nexus?" Kyra demanded as she strode into the room. The technopathic genius's eyes were glazed over, his mind interfaced directly with the systems around him. Long-range scans of the solar system. The Unity's main force, it's retreating. A stunned silence fell over the room. Zephyr was the first to break it. We won." The air manipulator's voice was filled with disbelief. Cypher, her form shifting restlessly between various guises, shook her head. No, this doesn't make sense. Why would they retreat when they had us on the ropes? Kyra felt a chill run down her spine. She remembered the Luminari's warnings, the glimpses of the bigger picture she'd seen during the heat of battle. Because this was never about conquering Earth, she said slowly, the realization dawning on her. This was a test. All eyes turned to her. Kyra took a deep breath, organizing her thoughts. Think about it. The unity, it's not just a hive mind. It's an idea. The idea that uniformity, absolute control, is the key to survival in the universe. And we just proved that idea wrong. Understanding dawned on Raxon's face. We showed that diversity, individual choice, is a strength, not a weakness, Kyra finished. We didn't just beat back their invasion. We challenged their entire worldview. The implications hung heavy in the air. Nexus was the first to voice what they were all thinking. So what happens now? Before Kyra could respond, an alarm blared from one of the consoles. Nexus's eyes widened as he processed the incoming data. We're receiving a transmission, he announced. It's from the Luminari. With a gesture, Nexus brought the transmission to life on the main display. The familiar crystalline form of their former mentors shimmered into view. Greetings, children of Earth. The Luminari's mental voice resonated through the room. You have done well. Kyra stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. You knew, didn't you? You knew this was all a test. The Luminari's form pulsed with what might have been approval or amusement. We suspected. The Unity's methods are predictable in their own way. So what happens now? Raxon demanded, his massive fists clenching at his sides. Is it over? And the Luminari's response was immediate. IT has only begun. You have proven yourselves worthy adversaries. The Unity will return, in greater numbers and with greater purpose. Kyra felt her heart sink. How long do we have? The Luminari's form shimmered, and suddenly a vast star map appeared behind them. Swathes of darkness crept across entire galaxies. Time is fluid, the crystalline being intoned. But we estimate no more than 5 of your Earth years before the full might of the Unity descends upon your world. 5 years. It seemed like an eternity and no time at all. What do we do? Zephyr asked, her voice small in the face of such a monumental threat. The Luminari's response was surprisingly direct. You prepare. You innovate. You push the boundaries of what is possible. And most importantly, you unite. The star map zoomed in, focusing on Earth. Pinpricks of light began to appear across its surface. Already, more of your kind awakened to their potential, the Luminari explained. The VARTHAX experiments, crude as they were, unlocked something within human DNA, a potential for greatness that had long lain dormant. Kyra's mind raced with the implications. You're saying there will be more like us? Indeed, but they will need guidance, training, a purpose. Raxon stepped forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with Kyra. That's where we come in. The Luminari's form pulsed with approval. Precisely. You must build not just an army, but a new society, one that embraces the diversity of human potential while united in purpose. As the weight of their new mission settled upon them, Kyra felt a surge of something. Not quite hope, not quite fear, but a fierce determination. We won't let you down, she declared, her voice carrying the strength of newfound purpose. We won't let humanity down. The Luminari's form began to fade, their parting words echoing through the room. Remember, children of Earth, you are the vanguard of a new age. The Unity seeks to consume all in its path. But you have the power to ignite a fire that will spread across the stars. A fire of freedom, of choice, of glorious, chaotic potential. As the transmission ended, silence fell over the command center. Each member of Project Prometheus lost in their own thoughts, grappling with the enormity of the task before them. It was Cypher who finally broke the silence. "So, what's our first move, boss?" All eyes turned to Kyra. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of leadership settle upon her shoulders. But it was a weight she was ready to bear. "We rebuild," she said, her voice filled with quiet determination. "We train, we prepare, and we show the world, show the universe, what humanity is truly capable of." Raxon placed a massive hand on her shoulder, a gesture of solidarity and support. "Together," he rumbled. Kyra nodded, a fierce smile spreading across her face. "Together," she agreed. "Unity and diversity. That's our strength. That's what will see us through." As the team began to disperse, each heading off to tackle the monumental tasks ahead, Kyra turned to look out the window. The sun had fully risen now, bathing the battered city in golden light. In that moment, she saw not just the destruction of the past, but the potential of the future. A future where humanity reached for the stars not as conquerors, but as explorers. Where the diversity of human experience became a beacon of hope in a galaxy threatened by homogeneity. The Varthax had sought to create super soldiers. Instead, they had unleashed humanity's true potential. And now, with the unity looming on the horizon, that potential would be put to the ultimate test. Kyra Voss, once an ordinary woman, now stood at the forefront of humanity's greatest challenge. And she was ready to fight, ready to lead, ready to show the universe what it truly meant to be human. The war for the soul of the galaxy had only just begun, but with every enhanced cell in her body, Kyra knew one thing for certain. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. They would rage against the dying of the light. And in that rage, in that beautiful, chaotic defiance, they would forge a future brighter than any star. The next 5 years would determine the fate of not just Earth, but countless worlds across the cosmos. And Kyra Voss, along with her team of extraordinary individuals, would be there every step of the way, leading, fighting, inspiring. For in the end, it wasn't super strength or gravity manipulation that would save them. It was the very thing that made them human, the ability to choose, to adapt, to unite. And united, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. The dawn of a new era had arrived, and humanity was ready to take its place among the stars.